It was on a Saturday night that everything fell apart. A friend called me in the middle of the party he was at, with an urgent voice, mixing anxiety and pity. "Your wife is here, with her lover." Those words pierced my chest like a sharp blade. I knew, somewhere in the back of my mind, that something had been wrong for a long time. She would arrive late from work, laugh at jokes I had never heard before, her eyes would get lost in thought when I tried to talk about trivial things. But hearing it from a friend, a stranger in the middle of a party, made it all too real. I felt a suffocating mix of anger and sadness, an urgency to prove to myself that this was nothing more than a mistake. I grabbed the car keys with shaking hands and drove there, my heart beating like a drum inside my chest. With every mile, a different memory haunted me, our birthdays together, the nights we spent planning a future that now seemed like a cruel lie. How could she do this? How could someone who claimed to love hide such a rotten secret for so long? I just wish it was a lie. I just wanted to get there and find everything as it always was. But deep down, I knew. I always knew. When I entered the party, the lights were flickering, the loud music drowning out any attempt to think clearly. It felt like the whole world was moving on, while my life was breaking into 1,000 pieces. My eyes frantically searched for her, ignoring everyone around me, as if I was running out of time. And there she was, next to him, laughing. A carefree, loose laugh, as if there was nothing wrong in the world. The kind of laughter I hadn't seen on her face in months. Something burned inside me at that moment. I didn't even know I was capable of feeling such cold, pure anger. I approached without her noticing, an invisible figure in the middle of all that fake happiness. When he finally looked up and saw me, his lips stopped smiling. Silence spread between us like poison. "It's over," I said, my voice barely audible but filled with a certainty I'd never felt before. She opened her mouth to speak, but my back was already turned, walking away, leaving that nightmare behind. But it wasn't that simple. That image of her, her eyes wide, her hand still touching his, wouldn't leave me alone. It wasn't just about betrayal. It was about years of life together, of trust, of promises that now seemed empty. It was about the fact that even after I said it was over, this was just the beginning. Because I couldn't let her get away so easily. I spent days trying to find answers, searching through our old conversations, looking for a sign I had missed, something that proved I wasn't as naive as I seemed. The pain of having been betrayed, of having been deceived, was almost unbearable. I wanted to confront her again, I wanted to demand an explanation that made sense. But every time I thought about it, I could only imagine the blank look she gave me at the party, as if I were just an obstacle in the way of what she really wanted. I couldn't accept that. And it was then that I decided to go further. If she wanted to live a lie, I would rip that mask off in every way possible. I began to watch her every move, collect evidence, prepare a coup that would not only destroy that farce, but also reveal what she and her lover really were. And then, the unexpected happened. I discovered that there was someone else involved, a key player that I had never known about before. A silent witness, who knew secrets that could change everything. This person had seen something I didn't yet know, but that could be the key to finally exposing the truth. And maybe, just maybe, give me the closure I so desperately needed. I needed this person to turn the tide. I needed to figure out how to do that. But the doubt gnawed at me. Why did she do it? When did it start? Was it some mistake on my part that I didn't even notice? How can someone you know so well turn into a stranger so easily? I wanted answers, and most of all, I wanted justice. And I was no longer willing to be the one left behind, trying to pick up the pieces of a life that never existed. I was ready to go all the way. And the end was closer than I imagined. Welcome to the channel. Here, we never support any type of betrayal. Our stories are fictional, but the moral is clear: betrayal destroys lives, breaks trust and leaves deep scars. Each narrative shows the painful consequences of those who choose this path. Get ready to dive into an intense and shocking story, where secrets are exposed and the unexpected always lurks. Good story. It was an autumn afternoon, and the golden sunlight spread across the elegant buildings of Boston, reflecting off the windows of the red brick houses. That soft glow seemed to frame what was, on the surface, a perfect life. John Parker walked down the busy street, taking a deep breath of fresh air as he thought about the past few months. He had always prided himself on being a balanced man, someone who valued hard work and stability. At 38, he had achieved what many would consider an enviable life: partner in a rising architectural firm, a comfortable home in an upscale neighborhood, and a marriage that, at least until recently, seemed solid. John and Emily had been together for almost a decade. They met at a summer party, and from the beginning, he was enchanted by her relaxed and charismatic way. Emily was the kind of person who made others feel important, who laughed easily, and seemed to find beauty in the little things. She worked as an art curator at a renowned gallery and always had fascinating stories about the artists she met. Her green eyes sparkled with enthusiasm every time she talked about a new project, and John loved seeing her like that. Their lives, on the whole, had been full of peaceful and happy moments. Cozy dinners at home, spontaneous trips on weekends, and that silent complicity that only those who have been together for a long time understand. But lately, something seemed to have changed. John noticed that Emily was distant, and he couldn't say when it started. Conversations that used to flow naturally seemed more forced, and the laughter that used to echo through the house became rare. He tried to convince himself that it was just a phase, that maybe it was the stress of work or some problem she didn't want to discuss, but doubt crept in. Little things started to bother me. Emily would arrive late from work, claiming to be overwhelmed at the gallery, and there were nights when she would spend hours on her cell phone, sending messages to someone she said was a coworker. John was never the controlling type, but these moments piled up in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he couldn't put together. Emily, for her part, felt like something was missing, but she couldn't put her finger on it. She loved John, that was undeniable. He was kind, caring, and did everything he could to keep the relationship stable. However, there was an unsettling feeling growing inside her, a desire to escape, to breathe outside the four walls that had become so familiar. For her, marriage was like a painting that, although beautiful, was beginning to lose its colors. The daily responsibilities, the repetitive routines, all of it made her feel like she was trapped in a life that didn't live up to what she imagined when she was younger. She remembered how in love they were at first, how a simple look from John was enough to make her smile. Now those moments seemed few and far between, and she wondered where they had gone. Emily blamed work, tiredness and even monotony, but something deeper bothered her. There were days when she caught herself looking at him and wondering if he really knew her, if he had ever been able to see who she really was, behind her charming smile and easy way of dealing with people. Their routine was like that of any other couple in their 30s, they woke up early, had coffee together, and talked about the day ahead. Emily hurried to leave, and John stayed a little longer, finishing his coffee while reading the news. The mornings were silent, each person was occupied with their own thoughts, and the nights ended with a brief kiss before going to bed, a gesture that seemed mechanical, without the spontaneity of before. John tried to ignore the feeling that something was wrong, but even when Emily smiled at him, there was a distance he couldn't overcome. Still, he clung to the hope that everything would return to normal. He planned surprises, tried to create moments for the two to reconnect, like short trips or romantic dinners. Emily smiled and thanked him, but there was a coldness that he couldn't explain. Deep down, he knew that it wasn't just the work that kept her away, but he avoided confronting her about it, perhaps for fear of the answer. He was always someone who believed in the power of effort, who thought that everything could be solved with patience and dedication. Maybe that's why he insisted so much on maintaining a routine, on trying to save something he didn't even know he was losing. The couple's closest friends noticed the changes, but rarely commented. The impression everyone had was that John and Emily were the perfect couple, the one who seemed to have everything under control. They were successful, had a beautiful house, and always made a point of showing up to events together. No one knew about the uncomfortable silences during dinner, the nights Emily spent in the living room, claiming insomnia, and the times John woke up in the middle of the night and found her sitting on the couch, staring into space. It was as if a silent chasm had opened between them, and they were both standing on the edge, not knowing how to cross to the other side. At work, John also began to feel the weight of uncertainty at home. He found himself distracted during meetings, unable to focus on the projects that once excited him. And when his colleagues asked if everything was okay, he would smile and say yes, as if saying it out loud would make it true. He knew something needed to change, but he didn't know how to make it happen. Maybe, he thought, the problem was with him. Maybe he was no longer the husband Emily needed, and that doubt was eating away at him. Emily, on the other hand, had her own dilemmas. She knew something was bothering her, but she didn't know how to explain it to John without sounding ungrateful or cruel. She wanted him to understand, but how could she do that without hurting him? And besides, there were things she wasn't ready to admit even to herself. Thoughts that scared her, that made her heart beat faster, and that she tried to bury under vague excuses and quick conversations. But these thoughts were still there, lurking, ready to emerge at any moment. And that's how the distance between the two remained, growing and inevitable. John continued to believe he could bring the light back into Emily's eyes as she moved further and further away, trying to find something she didn't even know existed. None of them had any idea what was coming, or how their lives were about to transform forever. In the shared silences and unspoken words, there was a tension that built, like a storm brewing in the distance, and no one knew when it would finally break. The following weeks brought an invisible but constant tension between John and Emily. As each day passed, he noticed little signs that suggested something was deeply wrong. Emily, who had previously lost herself in lively conversations about her exhibitions and projects, now said little. Her answers were short, evasive, as if she wanted to avoid questions that she knew could lead her to contradict herself. John tried to be patient, believing that everything would resolve itself with time. He convinced himself that if he created more moments for the two of them, if he insisted on the routine of dinners and nightly conversations, he would be able to break the barrier that seemed to separate them. But there were moments he couldn't ignore. Like the time he came home early, the surprise he had planned for her, only to find her on the phone, her voice low, almost a whisper, with a soft tone he hadn't heard in a long time. When she realized he was there, she quickly hung up, forcing a smile that looked more like an apology than one of joy. He wanted to ask, wanted to demand answers, but at the last moment he hesitated, afraid to hear something he wasn't prepared to deal with. One night, while Emily was taking a shower, John noticed her cell phone on the living room table. Something inside him screamed to ignore, to respect her space. But curiosity and fear were stronger. He unlocked the device, his heart pounding, and scrolled through the apps until he found the messages. It didn't take much to find a name I didn't recognize. Conversations full of laughter, emojis, and flirting that seemed to tear away any remaining hope he had that he was wrong. There it was, in words typed in a casual tone, the proof he never wanted to find: Emily was getting involved with another man. The messages were clear. There was a meeting scheduled for the next day, and a specific sentence made John's blood run cold: "I can't wait to see you again. I miss you." He read it over and over again, trying to find a way to interpret those words that didn't confirm his worst fears, but there was no way. His mind was torn between shock and fury, and he fought to maintain control, to not confront her immediately. As much as he wanted to explode, there was something stopping him. He needed to see. I needed to be sure. The next morning, John decided to go to work early, as he did every day. He gave Emily a brief kiss, who seemed oblivious to the storm brewing inside him. But instead of going straight to the office, he waited for her a few blocks from home, following her discreetly. I wanted to know where that meeting would take place, with whom. He felt miserable hiding, watching her without her knowing, but something inside him said it was necessary. He followed Emily to a discreet cafe, off the beaten path. The place was cozy, the lights low, with an atmosphere that seemed to invite secret meetings. John watched from inside the car as she got in and sat at a table by the window, her face lit up with a smile he hadn't seen in a long time. A smile that was supposed to be for him. Minutes later, a man appeared and sat down next to her, and Emily's smile became even brighter, an expression of affection that cut through John like a sharp blade. The man touched Emily's hand on the table, and she didn't flinch. On the contrary, she intertwined her fingers with his, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. John felt as if the air had been knocked from his lungs, a dull pain filling his chest. He stood there, watching, the seconds dragging by as they laughed and exchanged knowing glances. It was a spectacle he never wanted to see, a cruel confirmation of everything he feared. He thought about going in, confronting them right there, but there was something holding him back. It needed more than an impulsive confrontation. I needed a way to lay it all out, to lay my cards on the table once and for all. With his hands shaking, he took some photos with his cell phone, capturing every gesture, every touch, as evidence. Then he sat back in the car seat and closed his eyes, trying to process what that meant. When Emily returned home that night, John watched her in silence. She walked through the door, and for a brief moment, their eyes met. He saw the sparkle in her eyes, the trace of happiness she was still trying to hide. But he didn't say anything. He just smiled, a forced smile that tried to hide the pain. Inside, he was already plotting his next move, preparing himself for what came next. The confrontation would not come that night, nor the next day. John wanted Emily to know that he knew, but he needed to do it in a way that there was no doubt, no room for excuses or lies. He already had the proof, but the final blow was missing. He planned every detail in silence, while Emily continued to live that lie, thinking she had everything under control. And the longer John waited, the clearer his decision became. The truth would be revealed, and when it did, he wouldn't be the only one to suffer the consequences. The day of the confrontation had arrived, and John felt the weight of the moment as he prepared to face Emily. He had spent sleepless nights, planning every detail, calculating every word he would say. I didn't just want to confront her about what I had discovered. He needed to expose the whole truth, reveal the secret he had discovered and make it clear how much that betrayal had broken everything they had built together. When Emily walked through the door that night, unaware of the storm that awaited her, John greeted her with a silence that seemed deafening. She took off her coat, dropped her bag on the couch and turned to him, smiling. "Hi, love. How was your day?" he asked, as if he was trying to maintain normality, as if nothing was out of place. But he didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on her, intense, as if he wanted to capture every movement, every micro-expression. She felt something strange in the way he was looking at her and frowned. "Everything is fine." "No, Emily," he finally said, his voice low, controlled, almost cold. "Nothing is okay." She shifted uncomfortably. "What happened?" John hesitated for a moment, feeling the pain and anger mix in his chest, creating an almost unbearable tension. So he decided to start revealing what he had kept inside for so long. "I know about him," he said bluntly. The words seemed to echo through the room, carrying a weight he could no longer bear. "I know you're cheating on me." Emily stood still for a moment, her smile immediately fading. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Her eyes widened, as if searching for a way to deny, to erase those words from reality. "John, I..." "Don't lie," he interrupted, raising a hand to silence her. "I followed you. I saw you together." He pulled his cell phone out of his pocket and showed the photos he had taken in the cafe. Images that left no room for excuses, for vague explanations. Emily looked at those photos, her eyes filling with panic. She could feel the world crumbling around her, and for a moment, it felt like she didn't even know how to breathe. "John, please, I can explain," she began, trying to find the right words, but her voice was shaky. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I never wanted to hurt you. Wasn't it supposed to be like this? John laughed, but his laugh was bitter, full of pain. Do you think this is some kind of accident? Do you think I want to hear your apology now? I trusted you, Emily. For all these years, I thought we were happy, that you were happy. But you chose to lie, to pretend that everything was fine while he was with him. She felt tears begin to stream down her face, and for a moment, she tried to move closer to him, but John took a step back, as if trying to keep his distance from the pain she was causing. I'm so sorry, she whispered, her voice almost choked. I'm really sorry. But he didn't want her apology. He wanted the truth. How long has this been going on? Emily hesitated. A few months. Months? His anger rose, and he almost screamed. You lied to me for months. And you still thought you could just hide it and everything would be fine? She knew there was no way to escape, but still, she tried to explain, trying desperately to justify her actions. I was confused. I felt trapped, and he was someone who made me feel alive again. But it never meant anything, John. I never stopped loving you. It didn't mean anything. He repeated in disbelief. Then why lie? Why go through with it if it didn't mean anything? Do you think that makes it all less painful? He was ready to continue, to let all the anger and disgust out, when suddenly he stopped. Because there was more. Something she didn't know he had discovered, and he knew this was the moment. I found more than just the messages, Emily, he said, calmer now, but with a coldness that sent chills down her spine. I spoke to someone who saw you together. Someone who knows more than you know. She looked at him, confused, trying to understand what he was implying. What do you mean? They saw you together somewhere else. And it wasn't just a cafe. It wasn't just a casual meeting. John approached her, his eyes fixed on hers, as if to make sure she understood every word. You were at his house, Emily. Spending the night. She gasped in surprise, her face turning pale. Who said that? It doesn't matter who. What matters is that I know the truth now. And do you know what else I discovered? He paused, watching her face, waiting for the reaction he knew would come next. I discovered that you were planning something more. Something that involves more than just hiding a betrayal. Emily looked lost, desperate to understand what he was implying. John, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, he replied, his voice thick with disdain. Because you and your lover, the one you share smiles and touches with while lying to me, were planning a future together. And you thought you could do that while using me, while lying to my face. Emily's face turned pale, and she shook her head, trying to deny it. No. That's not true. Stop lying. John shouted, his patience finally wearing thin. I have the proof. And I have the person who can confirm it all. Someone who saw you together, not just as lovers, but planning your next move. And that person will testify. Emily tried to speak, but the words refused to come out. She felt like she was sinking into an abyss, unable to escape the truth that was finally being exposed. John, please. She managed to murmur, her voice barely audible. It's too late for that, he said, his voice filled with a determination she had never heard before. Because now, everyone will know who you really are. And you will have to face the consequences of your choices. The tears finally broke through her resistance, and she began to cry, but John showed no compassion. He watched her with a mixture of sadness and relief, like someone who was finally freeing themselves from an unbearable weight. And do you know what the most ironic part of all this is, Emily? He asked, his voice almost breaking. I really wanted to believe that you still loved me. I wanted to believe that there was some truth in the smiles, in the words. But it's all just a lie, and now, you're going to have to live with it. She burst into tears, unable to react, as he picked up his things and headed for the door. "John, wait." She tried, but he didn't look back. The truth had finally been revealed, and the storm they had tried to avoid for so long had finally exploded. But what she still didn't know was that it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Because the secret he was about to expose didn't just involve her betrayal, but something much bigger, something that would turn her world upside down and leave marks that could never be erased. John left the house that night, leaving Emily behind, lost in tears and despair. The door closed with a bang that echoed through the silence of the house, like an end to a story that seemed impossible to continue. He drove aimlessly, the streets passing him by in a blur, but his thoughts were clear, sharp as blades. During the confrontation, he had felt a mixture of relief and pain, as if he was finally releasing a scream that had been trapped inside him for months. But now, as the car cut through the darkness of the night, the reality of what he had just done was beginning to settle in his mind. He hadn't planned on leaving the house like that. I wanted the words and the exposition of the truth to be enough to wrap it all up, to finally free him from this silent torment. But Emily's reaction, her tears, her despair, made it clear that there was much more at stake. She hadn't denied the accusations, but he also couldn't ignore the pleading in her eyes, as if there was still something she wasn't willing to reveal. As he parked the car on a quiet street, away from the chaos he felt in his heart, John tried to reflect on what it all meant. He had put his cards on the table, he had shown that he knew everything, but what now? What was the next step? The betrayal was an overwhelming pain, but there was something deeper that disturbed him. The discovery that Emily was planning a future with someone else raised questions he didn't want to face. How could someone he knew so well have changed so much? How could their years together have been discarded like this, without hesitation? John knew that the secret he hadn't yet revealed could destroy not only Emily's life, but also the lives of others involved. This truth was a weight he carried, and he wasn't sure if he should use it as a last blow or simply let things take their course. The idea of exposing everything seemed appealing in his anger, but he also knew that once he did it, there was no going back. He would find himself caught in a web of consequences that could drag other people into the mud along with them. Meanwhile, Emily sat on the living room floor, looking at the door where John disappeared, still feeling the bitter taste of the words he had poured out on her. It wasn't just the betrayal that had destroyed her, it was the way he had exposed her, the way he knew more than she thought. She was so sure that she could control the situation, that she could keep everything hidden, but now she saw that that was just an illusion. Emily thought about the decisions she had made, the moments when she had given in to the temptation to feel alive again, and it all seemed so small and insignificant compared to the devastation she now saw before her. The secret that John had discovered, that witness he had mentioned, was what terrified her most. She knew that if he revealed everything, the consequences would be devastating, and not just for her. There was a moral dilemma hanging over all of this, something she wasn't sure how to resolve. She got up, shaking, and tried to call John. He left a voicemail, his voice shaking as he tried to find the right words. "John, please, can we talk? I know you're hurt, and I'm sorry. But, there's more you need to know, and I can't let it end like this. Please give me a chance to explain." John heard the message while parked near a small park, where they used to walk together on weekends. Hearing her words, he found himself torn. Part of him wanted to just ignore it, let her deal with the consequences alone. But another part, the one that still loved her, wanted to understand. What else could she have to say? He already knew about the case, he knew about the plans. What could change the situation now? After a few minutes of silence, he decided to call back. "What do you have to tell me, Emily?" he asked, his voice firm but without the anger from before. She hesitated for a moment before responding. "Not on the phone. Can we meet? Somewhere neutral where we can talk without shouting." John reluctantly agreed and suggested a cafe near the park. It was a place they had only been to a few times, a place that had no memories to interfere with what they needed to discuss. When he arrived, he saw Emily sitting at a table outside, wrapped in a coat, staring into her cup of coffee as if trying to find answers deep in the liquid. She looked up as he approached, and there was an expression of desperation there that he had never seen before. She started talking before he even sat down. "I know it seems like I screwed up, and maybe I did. But it's not that simple, John. What you know, it's just part of it. I wanted to protect you, so I hid it all." John looked at her, perplexed. "Protect? Do you think hiding a betrayal is protecting me?" "It wasn't just about the betrayal," she replied, her voice growing louder, more urgent. "It was about what could happen if certain things came to light. There are people involved in this, and if everything comes out, it could end up destroying more than just our marriage." "So you were deceiving me to protect other people?" he asked in disbelief. "Who are these people, Emily? And why should I care?" She glanced around, as if checking to see if anyone was listening, before leaning forward. "I can't tell you right now. But I beg you, John, you need to trust me. If you expose everything, you will destroy lives. Not just mine, but other people's who have nothing to do with this." Anger and confusion mixed inside him. "And why should I care what happens to them? Did you care about me when you decided to deceive me?" "No, Emily, that's your responsibility. I'm not going to carry this alone." She closed her eyes, as if she were trying to hold back tears, and when she opened them again, there was a new determination there. "I know I don't deserve to ask this, after all. But I am asking. Please meet me tomorrow, in a place where I can show you what's at stake. And then, if you still want to lay it all out, I will stop you." John hesitated. There was something in her tone, a sincerity he hadn't seen in months. Maybe it was another attempt at manipulation, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was truly desperate. He nodded, but his words came out harsh. "Fine. But if this is another lie, I won't hesitate to end it all." Emily watched him leave, feeling like this might be her last chance. Now all that was left was to wait and pray that, the next day, she could find a way to reveal the truth without destroying everything around her. The next morning, John woke up with a heavy feeling in his chest, as if the previous night had left deep marks that he couldn't erase. The meeting with Emily was scheduled for the end of the day, and he couldn't shake the idea that maybe she had something important to say. Still, he prepared for the worst. When he arrived at the agreed location, a discreet and remote park, he saw her already waiting, her gaze lost, like someone who was saying goodbye to a lifetime. Emily stood up as soon as she saw him, and for a moment there was a heavy silence, as if they were both trying to find the right words to begin with. "I appreciate you coming," she said, her voice low, as if she was afraid of being overheard. John didn't respond, just nodded, signaling for her to continue. "I need to tell you something that might change everything," Emily began, the tension visible in her every movement. "It won't justify what I did, but you need to understand the truth before making any decision." She took a deep breath and then continued, her eyes fixed on his, as if trying to find some form of lost connection. "The man you saw me with, he wasn't just someone I was seeing out of desire or curiosity. He's my boss. And for months, he's been pressuring me, threatening me. I tried to get out of it, but he said if I tried, he would destroy my career and use things against me." John felt a shiver run down his spine, but he didn't let the surprise make him lose control. "And why didn't you ever tell me any of this?" he asked, his voice tense. "You were afraid of what he might do, but you decided to lie to me, hide everything and continue acting like nothing was happening." "I wanted to protect you," she said, her voice breaking. "He had information that could harm not just me, but you too, John. And I was afraid that if I tried to fight him, I would end up making everything worse. At first, I thought I could handle it on my own, but they were out of my control. He threatened to expose secrets about our company, about projects you worked on. I know it sounds like an excuse, but I was trying to keep it from becoming a scandal. John didn't know what to answer. He felt anger, pain and confusion, all mixed together in a whirlwind of emotions that he couldn't separate. He wanted to believe her, but everything felt so out of control. "So why are you telling me this now?" he asked, his voice calmer than he expected. "Because I have nothing left to hide," Emily replied, and this time she looked more determined, more sure than he had seen her in a long time. "I spoke to the witness you mentioned. I know he told you what he saw, but there's more he can do. He's not just an observer. He's someone who has proof of the threats I received. And I want to use that to fight him." John stared at her for a long moment, trying to understand what she was proposing. "And why should I help? Why should I get involved in a situation that you created and kept hidden from me?" "Because if you don't, he's going to win," she said, tears threatening to fall but her voice remaining firm. "He will get away with it, and I will continue to be a pawn in his game. But if you join me, if we use what we have, we can expose everything. Not just my betrayal, but his manipulation, the threats. We can end this once and for all." For a moment, John was silent, trying to process what she had just said. It was a proposal he never would have imagined hearing, a possibility of exposing not only betrayal, but an entire web of lies and manipulations that went far beyond what he thought. "So this was all about survival?" he asked, and his voice came out softer than he intended. Emily nodded, her eyes shining with renewed hope. "I'm not trying to justify what I did, John. I messed up, and nothing will ever take that away. But I want to make it right, and I want you to know that, despite everything, I still care. If I could take it back, I would have done everything differently. But now, it's the only chance we have to end this." John closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the decisions he had to make. Part of him wanted to just walk away, let Emily face the consequences alone, as he had planned. But another part, a part that still cared, knew this was the opportunity to end the pain and betrayal they had been facing once and for all. He took a deep breath and looked at her. "If we're going to do this, then we need to do it right." In the days that followed, John and Emily worked together to gather all the evidence they had. The witness John had mentioned earlier, a discreet employee at the gallery where Emily worked, proved crucial. He revealed that Emily's boss had been using his position to manipulate and intimidate several people, and that the affair with Emily was just one part of a larger scheme of control and power. John and Emily knew they were taking a big risk in confronting someone like that, but they also knew it was the only way to end the situation. Finally, the day of confrontation arrived, and Emily's boss was surprised with a formal complaint, clear evidence of her threats and manipulations, carefully collected for months. He tried to deny it, he tried to intimidate, but this time, there was no escape. The evidence was irrefutable, and within days the story spread throughout the company and the media, revealing a dark side that many suspected but no one had the courage to face. For John, the result was bitter and sweet at the same time. He got to see justice done, but he knew the price had been too high. The relationship between him and Emily was in ruins, and even with everything exposed, he could no longer see her in the same way. After the scandal, Emily decided to leave town and start over somewhere else. "I'm leaving," she said to John, before leaving. "I hope you can find someone who loves you the way you deserve." John didn't respond right away, just watched her as she walked away. He knew that the love he felt for her was still there, somehow, but mixed with pain and distrust. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily," he said finally. "And I hope this never happens to anyone else." The scandal had repercussions beyond what anyone imagined. The gallery company was forced to review its practices, and Emily's boss faced not only the loss of his position, but also a criminal investigation. John, on the other hand, moved on, knowing he had done what was right, but aware that some scars would take a long time to fade. And that was the story. We want to know your opinion. What do you think of this twist? Leave your comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. where we explore the consequences of betrayal and its devastating impacts. Remembering that this channel does not support any type of betrayal, but seeks to show how choices have consequences and the truth always finds a way to emerge.